So the first thing I would do is for number one, figure out your DNA code.
Your DNA code.
DNA code. Every person has a brain DNA code.
Hmm.
And from this DNA code,
It's a bit different than your regular body DNA?
it's different gene SNPs. We're looking at specific gene SNPs that are in your brain. And these gene SNPs regulate dopamine, norepinephrine, all these neurotransmitters that create behavior, right? And so someone, like one of the big things that people always say in this industry is you got to look for my leaders, look for the champions.
Yeah.
And typically they have a low amount of what's called MAOA gene SNP. That low gene SNP makes that person a warrior. They can deal with rejection, go through walls, not have an issue. And that is a very entrepreneurial mind versus someone who has a high amount of MAOA they'll have paralysis of analysis. They'll get stuck. They'll sit and say, why can't I move forward? They'll be overly sensitive to rejection and they can't move forward. So first thing I would sit and say is you got to get your code.
Hello, everybody. Eric Worre here, and welcome to the Excellence Project. I have today a special guest, author of Wired for Wealth, Dr. Alok Trivedi, and he's a human performance expert, author of the best-selling books Wired for Wealth and Chasing Success. And we talk about rewiring your mind for success, rewiring your body for success, and creating a way that you can attract success naturally instead of always pushing the rock uphill. He's got 27 years of study. He's developed his own approach, which includes 92 techniques and tools to rewire the brain, been featured all over the world, and I think you're going to love the conversation. So with no further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Dr. Alok Trivedi. Dr. Alok Trivedi, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you're here. Thanks for coming in from Chicago. I bet it was cold.
It is cold, so I was looking forward to the opportunity to get away.
Yeah, we're here in Las Vegas, and Dr. Trivedi he's kind of known as Dr. Rewire.
Yeah.
A human performance expert, author of the best-selling book Wired for Wealth, which I have right here, and Chasing Success. He's sought out by CEOs, celebrities, professional athletes, and entrepreneurs to rewire their thinking with a science-based approach. That's super fascinating. So they could transform their health, wealth, and relationships. So you talk about using your health background coupled with 27 years of study and practice of mind-body connection, the science of success and fulfillment, and research of human behavior. You develop your own approach, which now includes 92 techniques and tools to rewire the brain.
Sure.
I'm fascinated because for entrepreneurs, the wiring, the old programming is such a huge issue. Myself, it's a huge issue. Dealing with self-worth, dealing with bad habits, becoming aware of things that are not serving you, limiting beliefs, challenging those limiting beliefs. How do you replace them with empowering beliefs?
Yep.
How do you one Jim Rohn used to always say that how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I found out that that's not true.
I agree.
You can totally be dominant in one area of your life and totally dropping the ball in another area of your life.
Yep.
At least that's been true for me. And I think for other people too. So talk to me about your work and kind of the journey of getting into your work. And then let's dive in.
Well, it's interesting, right? Thanks for the question. I think for me, it started way back when. I was a 19-year-old kid failing out of school, and someone gave me a Tony Robbins CD set, and it changed my life. And I was like, oh my God, what is this?
Personal Power, 30-day thing?
It was Get the Edge.
Okay,
Get the Edge. And I was getting a 1.9 GPA, and the guy said, you got to listen to this. And I said, okay. So I listened to it, and it was great. And it started to change and transform my life. Now, I was on the path of going to medical school, or at least trying to go to medical school, or open a bunch of 7-Elevens. That's what, as an Indian guy, that's what I did.
Right.
It was one of the other.
Right.
And so I started going down this path, and I started realizing, what is this thing? And instead of medicine, I found my path down chiropractic.
Okay.
And I was really excited about it. So I went down chiropractic, graduated school, did all this stuff. I was quote unquote successful. And I actually went ahead and built one of the largest clinics in the world at one point. And we were seeing over 1,250 people a week.
Wow.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot.
But the thing with it was that I started seeing patients and I started asking them different questions because my study went from personal training to physical therapy to chiropractic to nutrition to brain, neurology, quantum neurology. I started studying all these things and I thought, what if we could rebalance the brain to help heal the body? And so I started playing with these examples. I had a case one time where the guy comes in, he always comes in on the 3rd of the month. And he says, I'm here. I'm like, why do you keep coming on the 3rd of the month? No matter what you do, you're on the 3rd of the month. And he says, I don't know, doc. I don't know. I said, what goes on? What happened when this pain started? And he said, well, I don't know. I said, when did it start? He said, last night. I said, okay, great. It started last night. I said, what were you doing? And he said, I was talking with the wife. I said, what were you talking about? We're talking about how we're going to pay the mortgage by the 5th. And I said, got it. So I literally at that time started playing with this idea. What if I got these questions to rebalance his brain? And I did. And I said, I'm not going to touch you. I'm not going to do anything, no therapy, nothing. I'm just going to ask some questions. I'm going to go home and you're going to go home. He says, okay. I said, come back tomorrow. I want to see how you're doing. And he comes back and he's 85% better. And I said, okay. He's like, Doc, what'd you do? I said, I don't know. I'm working with something. Finished off 15% goes away. He doesn't come back in 6 months. And I said, what happened? And he says, I don't know, doc. I'm better. I said, how's the money situation? He goes, I don't know. That got better too. And I started to think about this, right? Because I'm studying success and personal development and like Jim Rohn, all the classics that we're talking about. And then I started piecing it together. I started saying, if we balance the brain, we're balancing the body, but then we're also balancing the way that we think about life. And so I started putting these processes together. I started putting these tools together. And then honestly, I had to become a client of my own. And I went through a divorce, a pretty brutal divorce.
Sure. And
lost every dime I had. I like to sit and say, I had a lemon to eat for 4 days. So I was intermittent fasting before it was a thing, really, to be honest.
Right.
Not by choice.
Right.
And so, but I was speaking at all these events and I was speaking in front of audiences and I'd be backstage, Eric, and I'd say, guys, I need your help. Like, I got to figure out how to make some money here or else I'm going to lose it. And I'm going to lose my kids. All this stuff, like the stuff that comes up, real life stuff. And I remember asking questions to names that everyone would know if I'd said them. I was in the rooms with some big hitters at the time. And I'd say, guys, I need your help. And they're like, well, okay, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, doing, the standard affirmations, reading books, trying to change my limiting beliefs, all this stuff. And it's not working. And they said, okay, well, you got to change your beliefs. I said, got that, right? Like, I'm not a dummy. I get that. How? And then I kid you not, it was radio silence. They said, I said, how do you change your beliefs? And they said, well, you do the standard stuff. And I said, okay. I said, let me ask you a different question then. I said, how do I know what my beliefs are if I need to change them? And they said, well, that's easy. They said, you look at your environment and those are your beliefs. And honestly, at that moment, I was like, my BS meter went off.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, no, that's not true. I said, I'm a doctor. If someone walks into my office with back pain, they have back pain. The cause of it could be a sprain, strain, herniated disc, spondylolisthesis, spondylolysis, all cancer, tumors, all these different things. I said, so what I realized at that time is that the belief was the symptom, not the cause. So I went home that night and I literally pulled out all my neuroanatomy textbooks, all my neuroscience textbooks. And I said, I got to figure this out because I don't think anyone else is going to come to save me. And so I literally pulled them all out. 2 a.m, I come up with this. I said, I got to figure out the anatomy of the belief. And I did. And I said, okay. And I created this belief in my life, Eric, that you could have love or money, but not both through my divorce. And I said, that's interesting. So I stayed up till 4 a.m. I didn't know really what I was doing at that time completely, but I rewired my own brain. 3 days later, I was blank with no money for 9 months. 3 days later, I sell a deal. I make my first $175,000. 3 days after that, I make another $108,000. 3 days later after that, I make $110,000. I said, okay, there's something here that I'm onto. And that's where the journey really began in helping people wire their brains around money and wealth.
Fascinating. So I have a methodology that I use and I'm interested in yours. I know what worked for me. I know what I'm still stuck on, still areas where I'm stuck, like levels of a video game, you got to beat the boss at that level in order to be able to get to it. Still struggle with self-worth, and battle it all the time. And it shows up in very, very weird, symptoms, but, nutrition for sure is like the next big boss.
Got it.
I'm a champ, until 6 p.m.
Got it.
Absolute champ. And it used to be, physical fitness as well. And now I feel like I've conquered that piece and into a rhythm on it, But I know and I've helped millions of people
Yeah, you do.
to change their beliefs about network marketing, about entrepreneurship, about themselves, about their capabilities. And I have a process for that. But it certainly isn't maybe it is, but not a mind body thing that I focused on. I had an interesting conversation that kind of started with my health journey a little over 2 years ago. I did an interview with Richard Branson. He was in Necker Island. I was here. We were having a conversation, and I asked him, what do entrepreneurs need to do this beginning of the year to make this next year their best year? And he said they need to be as fit as possible.
Yeah.
That was his answer. And I'm like, what? How is that an answer? Now he's, his 70s, just ripped and six pack and, walking around all the time with his shirt off and having fun and playing tennis and, moving his body 4 hours a day and enjoying it. And I'm bloated and, inflamed and look like I'm stung by 1,000 bees. And I like, I got, so it changed my awareness, which started the process. Right. Yeah. And I think there's a big difference between somebody who's driven by external things and somebody who's driven by internal things.
Sure.
And still, for many of the things that I'm trying to work on, I need external things. I need accountability. I left to my own devices, things will tip over.
Yeah.
Or if I get out of my bubble,
sure,
things will tip over. So, so you found this, like some clues leading you down a path, and it turned into a practice for you, turned into a business for you.
All of it. So I first it came into my own salvation, to be honest with you. And then I realized, I said, okay, if I start doing this in one area for myself, I was already doing it with clients. I already started.
So this worked with your love or money thing.
Yeah, it worked with that. And then then I said, okay, here's one of my beliefs. What if I do this with all of them?
Mm-hmm.
And then I started going around the wheel to master my own life. And I said, real mastery is about me being able to integrate all of my beliefs.
Yeah.
And so I did. I spent years, and I still do to this day. I'm not done with it. Like, we always create new experiences. And so, but I sat there and I just rewired every area of my life, one by one by one. And I started to create the life that I wanted to, and I realized the science behind it. I studied the depth of the science and saying, okay, well, why is that keeping me stuck? Right. And I'll tell you, like in network marketing, there's a big thing and I don't know if you say this or not, but everyone says you got to know your why. You got to know your why. There's some truth to that.
Yep.
The bigger question is, what's your why not?
Yeah. I view it as reasons.
Yeah.
What are your reasons, and what's the emotion attached to those reasons?
But the real reason,
because if the reasons are strong enough, you'll get something done.
Or actually, the brain actually works the opposite direction. Believe it or not, the brain works in twice the pain will get you to move. So if someone sits and says, you know what, the pain of me going to prospect, the pain of me trying to build my business, is going to counteract with me actually navigating and having to deal with my kids. If that's too hard, I won't do it. Because our brain will move away from pain twice as likely versus moving towards pleasure. Mm-hmm. And when we say, what's our why? Automatically, we're saying we have to go through a massive amount of pain to get to the pleasure. Mm-hmm. Instead, what I said, what if I just rewired the pain and realized that there is no pain there and just move myself towards pleasure and relink the whole thing and get what I want out of it? And that's what I started doing.
So if I'm understanding this right, you kind of moved the pain out of the way and focused more on pleasure, but you said people were more apt to respond to avoidance of pain.
They would move towards the avoidance of pain.
Yeah.
Right? If there's pain, they'll move away from it. If they have a headache, instead of drinking water, exercising, taking deep breaths, first thing most people are going to do is going to reach for an Advil, right? Maybe not in this audience, but general mass public. That's what they're going to do. But if we have them understand what's the real reason why you're not building that business, is it because you have what I call a root experience or a trauma when you were a kid that says rejection is bad?
Yeah.
Or is there something that says, you know what, I have a hard time building this business because, you know what, I have a belief around network marketing and distribution chains and all this. Then those things are literally have to get rewired, or else they're going to hit this wall again and again and again. The why won't be enough.
Well, let me just back up then and just start with, I'm a client or somebody listening to this as a client. Tell me your process.
So the first thing I would do is for number one, figure out your DNA code.
Your DNA code.
DNA code. Every person has a brain DNA code. And from this DNA code,
it's a bit different than your regular body DNA.
It's different gene SNPs, We're looking at specific gene SNPs that are in your brain. And these gene SNPs regulate dopamine, norepinephrine, all these neurotransmitters that create behavior,
Mhm.
right? And so someone, like one of the big things that people always say in this industry is you got to look for my leaders, look for the champions.
Yeah.
And typically they have a low amount of what's called MAOA gene SNP. That low gene SNP makes that person a warrior. They can deal with rejection, go through walls, not have an issue. And that is a very entrepreneurial mind versus someone who has a high amount of MAOA they'll have paralysis of analysis. They'll get stuck. They'll sit and say, why can't I move forward? They'll be overly sensitive to rejection and they can't move forward. So first thing I would sit and say is you got to get your code. Second thing.
So how do you do that?
You take a brain DNA test.
So where does a person go for a brain DNA test?
We have it on the site. I'm the only person that actually in the world, as far as I know, that actually does that.
Okay.
So we do it. It's like a gene SNP. You just take a cheek swab, you get the brain DNA test, and it gives you your report. From that, you optimize how you function. Then we find out intrinsically what is an individual's values. When we know what an individual's neurologic values are, not what they think they are, not what the world says they are, when they actually know what their real values are, then what they're going to do is be able to move forward towards the direction they want to.
So how do you figure out? You figure out the gene test to figure out your brain DNA, and then how do you figure out your values?
It's a whole process. It's like a 14-question process I take people through.
Okay.
And then we
so
take
the answers to the questions will kind of guide you, whether or not they're aware of it. It'll guide you to their values.
True clarity of their values. I'll give you an example. I was doing this with a client, I don't know, maybe 5-7 years ago. She's like, Doc, I don't need to do this. I know my values. I have, it's God, family, business. I said, okay, great. Fantastic. And she says, all right. And so I said, just do the assignment. If you already know, you got nothing to lose. So she does the assignment and I said, okay, great. And it comes out that God is number 10, family is number 8, and business is not even on the sheet. And I said, tell me how your relationship with the guy upstairs is. And she's like, I haven't been to church in 6 months. I said, okay. That doesn't mean you don't have a relationship. How's your relationship? She goes, I just don't feel like I have one. I said, how's your family? She goes, I'm in the middle of a divorce. I haven't seen my kids in 3 months. How's your business? She goes, I don't have a business. I've been lying to myself. I go to the meetings. I do that. I don't have a business. I said, your values will dictate your destiny 100% of the time. It's not arbitrary. So once we know what your values are, then what we have to do is we have to wire your brain to connect to the things intrinsically that you want, not the things that you think you want.
So let me just back up.
Yep.
I'm big on process.
Okay.
Process. Step 1 is get your brain DNA test.
Correct.
How much did that cost?
$300.
$300. Step 2 is to go through a series of questions that will help you understand what your values are.
Correct.
Not what you think they are, but what they actually are.
What they are neurologically.
Neurologically.
Yeah.
And these questions somehow are proven to be able to pull that out. Okay. Where did they come from?
I designed them.
Okay.
So over all the years I've worked with people, I've been able to design.
How many clients have you put through this process?
500,000.
500,000?
I've been working with 500,000 clients, and I would say this process specifically
with like brain DNA and all that.
No. I'm saying with this specific part of the values process.
The values process.
I'd say about 25 to 30,000 people have gone through it.
Okay. So all right. So you go through these questions, and then you figure out what the values are, and then step 3.
And then step 3, what we have to do is we have to remove all the emotions that are preventing you, the why nots. These are the things that are like the 5 primary emotions I call are guilt, shame, resentment, pride, and infatuation.
What's the last one?
Infatuation.
Infatuation?
Infatuation.
Okay.
When we get infatuated, or when we have pride that we've done something well, or we have resentment, or we have guilt or shame, that's where the self-worth game comes in. These 5 emotions, what I've seen, this is anecdotal, observational. I don't have any evidence for it, but these are the 5 emotions I've seen have prevented people from moving forward. And once we rewire those, get rid of those by literally taking them through a process of questions to rebalance those, then what happens is the person easily moves forward. They go from what's called the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. You probably studied that before.
Not really. I'm a pretty simple guy. Mel Robbins.
Yeah.
She talks about that stuff quite a bit. What happens in your brain chemistry and the 5-second rule. and she just launched a new book
Mhm.
called Let Them.
She's
Whatever
great.
people are going to do, let them.
Yeah.
And it does something in your brain to release the particular response of another person in order for you to be happy.
Yeah.
So she deals with that a little bit, and I've just done it surface stuff.
Got
you
it.
know, I really try to pay attention to really practical things and how can people get unstuck. You know, because there's no more helpless feeling than feeling stuck and not knowing how to get out. You know,
And I think that's a big thing, right?
Mhm.
Like when I started to devise this, I was there,
Mm.
right?
Right.
I was that guy who was
Yeah.
there.
So you practice on yourself.
I did myself. I practice on myself. I come up with new techniques. The reason I have 92 techniques because I'm more screwed up than probably anyone else is. I've had to figure it out for myself.
So you were talking about your cortex and
Mhm.
and the brain stuff.
Yeah. So what happens is that you have a part of the brain in the front of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. It's called the executive center of the brain. That part of the brain is where you're most logical. You move forward, you're mission driven, you're focused, purpose driven, and you move towards what it is. Behind sits the amygdala. This is the emotional center of the brain. And the studies have shown the people who live from their amygdala are more emotionally erratic, lower life expectancies, and are more chaotic. The people who are governed and take their emotions and bring them to the prefrontal cortex are organized, structured, can manage their life, manage their emotions towards the directions of their goals. That's what I call being unshakable
Mhm.
at that point. And so we wire the brain to become unshakable in between in the area
So
called
how do you tactically take somebody's emotions and get them kind of managed in this logical part of their head?
it's processes. It's literally taking process. It's taking someone saying, okay, let's take this belief or take this idea, this event
Mm-hmm.
that happened and rewire the event. And then as they rewire the event, it no longer has that challenge inside them. And so when we're working with people, right? People deal with anxiety and stress and depression. All these things that they're holding on to become the limiting areas of their life that don't allow them to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
If we can, in a matter of minutes, be able to rewire those things, depending on what's the actual causes, right? Is it resentment? Is it anger? Is it guilt? Is it shame? With the right tools, and since I apply this tool to it, remove that emotion, be able to move forward, that is getting people unstuck.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I call the rewiring process. It's it's a cognitive process. It's
Mhm.
basically a questioning process that you can take your life and be able to move yourself forward. And we talk about health from a standpoint of mindset and meditation and relaxation tools and all that. And that's good, but they're escapes.
Yeah, or the challenge that I found with them is my basic process, what I did early on is knowing that I was the asset. I needed to develop me.
Mhm.
I needed to figure out my weaknesses in terms of what I wanted to do for my business and raise my awareness on those things.
Sure.
And then just put them into plan, do, review. You know, it's just like, I need to learn, I have to change this habit. And then I make a plan, do it, review it, make another plan, do it, review it. And most of the change happened in the doing for me.
Okay.
So, you know, they say your thoughts determine your attitudes determine your actions get your results. So I thought at first I thought you had to figure out all your programming and thoughts first.
Mhm.
That takes a long time, for me at least. I found out if I was hungry enough, I would do the activity long enough that eventually I would change my attitude about it. And then it would eventually change my thinking about it. Right. So I kind of reprogrammed from the doing and from kind of evidence-based confidence building skills. And that slowly rewired my programming, which I still work on. Right.
Sure.
So I just didn't have that kind of time to like, I have to like figure out all these different claws that are in my head that happened since childhood in order to be able to stop sabotaging everything. I just needed to just bite the bullet and do the work. And then it worked backwards for me. So
I think I mean, absolutely. And that works for some people.
yeah. Okay.
What about everybody else that's DNA is not based that way? It's not that easy for them, right? Like you're obviously a super successful individual. You've helped millions of people. But what about that person that says, I can't deal with that rejection no matter what I do? And their brain DNA has a code, a path, like an MTHFR,
Yeah.
right? If that's the code,
Really, that's really good. Because here's the thing. I grew up a people pleaser, and I really, if somebody was dissatisfied with me for any reason or rejected me for any reason, it was devastating.
Sure.
And when I got involved in network marketing, I realized that failure is a much better teacher than success. And it didn't even really matter what happened from an experience, good or bad. It just mattered that I learned from it. So I changed my thinking around it to kind of become friends with rejection and humiliation.
Great.
Because if somebody smashed me in the face, I'm going to learn way faster. I'm going to come back tomorrow better for it.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to let it crush me. I was going to use it. But my whole life prior to that, I let it crush me. So I don't know if it's network marketing that caused me to think differently about it, or what, or ambition, or just trying to figure out I'm going to change my life, because I would say my DNA prior to that was not at all. Maybe it was predisposed, but for whatever reason, I was a people pleaser. I needed to have an audience. If somebody, my parents didn't even need to, punish me for anything. They just had to be disappointed in me, and then I'd be a wreck.
Right.
So, but now I literally don't care.
It's interesting because just in that explanation,
Yeah.
I would sit and say you probably have I don't know this. Again, it's just observationally, right? I would sit and say there's a gene called OXTR. OXTR is super oxytocin driven, right? So high amounts of oxytocin are much more connected, and someone who has low amounts of oxytocin is disconnected.
So tell me about oxytocin.
Oxytocin is the connection, right? So it's love, connection, feeling loved, feeling sensitive.
Yeah, I'm a very high empath for sure.
So if that's a person like that, then the OXTR pathway is something that you look at. So someone in that state could have high amounts of OXTR.
Okay.
And if they do, then they need high amounts of love, connection. They need to be attaboyed often enough. And if they don't get it, they shrink. They fall small. They procrastinate. They feel.
See, I needed. I think I need it, but a big change happened for me. Is I was always trying to get the attention of people that I wildly respected and have them, listen to me or whatever. And here's how I kind of imagined it in my mind. Imagine there were, 4 or 5 people like Mount Rushmore, but they're faced the other direction.
Okay.
And I'm at their back, and I'm jumping up and down saying, look at me. Well, look at what I achieved. Look at what I did. I followed your advice. I did this thing. I did that thing. And occasionally they turn their head and look over their shoulder and they give me a thumbs up. Hey, attaboy. And they turn back and they back engaged in their conversation. I never could earn my way into that crowd. So eventually I was frustrated with it. I was just in my mind, right? If I'm doing this, I wonder if somebody's trying to do that to me.
Yeah.
And I just turned around and there was
is.
all these people. And I
That's
went,
right.
oh, I just focus here. If I just focus on the people who are naturally attracted to me versus the people who weren't, okay. Those big shots were always going to have me in a certain category. These other people, I was a big shot. So I just turned around and engaged with them.
100%.
And then those 4 or 5 eventually turned around and wanted to be part of the group because, I didn't need them as much, I guess. I don't know. But that was a kind of an interesting thing for me. So I guess I found it in different people.
Well, what you did is you rebalanced your own perception.
Uh,
You unconsciously.
Because I still wanted,
Yeah.
I tell people my love language is contribution.
Yeah.
And I live for a tap on the shoulder. You don't know me, but 5 years ago I read the book, or I was in that course, or I was on that Zoom, or I was at that event, and I changed everything.
Yeah.
And that makes me super happy.
Yeah, and I would bet you have an OXTR that's super sensitive because of that. But what you did is, that's one of the tools is to look and say, okay, whatever you're searching for, where do you have?
Yeah.
And you start finding it in your own mind, and you rebalance it in yourself. And you did that naturally, which is exactly what, if we can do that, our brain is trying to get us to do that, but we just don't look sometimes, right? You did it naturally, which is why I would bet that was a huge turning point in your life, your business.
And I still have to be reminded.
We all do.
There's some people that I really admire and we're casual friends. I'd like to have closer relationship, but that's just not in the cards for them.
Yeah.
And they're big, powerful people, billionaire types.
Yeah.
And I think they're amazing, and they tolerate me, and they, just like, hey, yeah, I know him. Yeah, whatever. But they're not calling me for any reason.
Sure. I think we all
I'm
have
reaching
that.
out. I'm reaching out to them, but I like that burn. I'm okay with that burn.
Absolutely.
You know, I like being in big rooms where you just should be quiet and listen because, you know, there's really powerful people talking,
Agree.
you know, because there's really rare rooms. You know, and you probably have a flow for explaining this, and I might be interrupting that flow, but another aspect that I deal with and I try to coach people on, and I deal with myself, is your conscious and your subconscious mind.
Okay.
And you know, people have a primary and secondary. Typically, you know, like when I talk about network marketing, most people treat their job like a primary and their network marketing is a secondary thing that they'll do when they have time. And so long as that stays in place that way, then their subconscious mind is going to constantly be sabotaging their network marketing business in order to serve what is primary to their subconscious mind, right? And until they switch the two, even if they're part-time and their network marketing becomes primary and their job becomes secondary, then it'll start to serve their network marketing business and not serve the other things. It's like, I watched this course with Steve Martin about being a comedian. And he said, if you want to be a comedian, you need to be thinking about comedy all the time. You need to be writing jokes all the time. All your friends need to be comedians. Every time you have a spare moment, you need to be studying and watching and paying attention. You need to be in the environment. Even if you're working, you know, as an employee in some place, you need to be thinking about it. Your subconscious brain is grinding thousands and thousands of 1% adjustments to lead you towards you know what is primary for you. And if it's, oh, I'm going to do this when I have time, then it's your subconscious mind is literally going to eviscerate and close every door, every opportunity that you're not even aware are being closed, but you're closing them. You're not going to see things that show up that would show up for somebody who's totally focused on that. So I've learned that just the awesome power of a subconscious mind and how careful you need to be with your self-talk, how careful you need to be with what is truly important. Like you talk about your values.
Yeah.
What is truly important, because that's what your subconscious mind serves. And I don't know if any of what I'm saying is scientifically accurate at all. I just know that feels like my experience.
And it's true, right? There's truth to it. If I can take it a step further.
Please.
So what happens is that when you actually identify your values and you remove what I call these root emotions, these root experiences, those voices that distract you go away. The subconscious doesn't need to be there. When you're living in your state.
It doesn't need to be there, but isn't it always there?
I actually don't, in my work and what I've realized is that Freud used to talk about the subconscious, right? Freud is the one who really stemmed that. But when you actually stem the brain and you move the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, you move the emotions and you rebalance the emotions, those voices subside. I know, I used to live with them and I've helped thousands of clients. Those emotions go away. Those voices go away. That secondary voice in your head, which we call the subconscious. And I actually don't propose to the idea of self-sabotage or limiting beliefs because the brain is going to hold on to the belief that it needs to make sure it survives. So if, for example, someone's trying to build their business and let's say they want to make $10,000 a month, but they believe that $10,000 a month is going to cause them more pain, more harm, more agony, they will fall back to the level that they're used to, right? And it's the old saying that water seeks its own level.
Yep.
That identity is going to be at $3,000 or $2,000. They will make the average of what they're trying to do over the identity of where they're at. And so they'll push to try and get to that goal. And even if they break that goal once, they fall back to where they are.
They won't hold it, right?
They won't hold it. So, but now if you rewire and remove these emotional states of someone, then they can move towards where they want to go. So that belief isn't limiting, it's actually protecting. Every belief we have, the brain is not designed to restrict abundance. The brain is designed.
If somebody's like addicted or something, that's not protecting. If they're,
it is.
How is it protecting if they're destroying themselves by doing it?
Because they probably have an emotion of guilt or shame that's actually causing them to self-destruct. Every experience, I've worked with alcoholics, heroin addicts, addiction people who've had massive addictions. And we aren't going to do something in our brain that we don't see more benefits and drawbacks to.
Isn't it more like short-term and long-term, short-term pleasure, long-term, they can't think about long-term consequences?
Because they're emotional. Because they're in the amygdala in an emotional state. And so what happens is now that person sees there's more benefits right now in me eating the chocolate cake or having the alcohol or having the drug, whatever it is, whatever addiction we want to give it, we sit and say that addiction now is more beneficial in this moment, so that we go towards it. Now that's not does it hurt you in your life? Absolutely. But does a person believe that? No. When I sit down and I work with a situation with someone who's addicted to something, first thing I have to do, I did it yesterday. Lady's like, I keep eating unhealthy foods. She goes, I can't tell you, doc. I just go and I eat unhealthy foods. I said, good. Let's go find out why you do it. And she's like, I know it's so bad for me. I said, you still do it because you believe that there's a reason for you to do it. If I can tell you it's wrong for you for the rest of your life. Look, I didn't preach. I'm not preaching from an ivory tower. I smoked cigarettes. I smoke a pack of cigarettes a day. I drank like a fish. I was 55 pounds overweight. So I had to do this to myself to get it. And I judged myself. I brought myself to shame. I did all these things. I was an addict. And the only reason I stopped being an addict is when I realized that I was actually doing this because I believed it brought me more pleasure than pain at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I rewired that and I figured that out, I got clear and I got grateful for who I am and why I do it. Then I unlocked my path forward.
Okay. All right. Well, look, I'm kind of shooting questions at you randomly. I'm sure you have a process. Is there any way that you can give people an example of how listening to this or watching this, that they could figure out one of their values?
Yeah, I would sit and say, first thing I would sit and say, look at one of the simple questions I say to people is, it sounds so simple, but look at someone's Instagram or look at your Facebook page. How do you identify yourself? How do you identify yourself to the world, right? What do you spend your time doing? Literally, what do you spend your time doing? Because people will sit and say, I'm trying to build my business, but are they spending time building their business? They may not be. They may be spending time going to the gym. They may be spending time reading books. They may be spending time, spending time with their family. And they'll be beating themselves up because they think that they're trying to build their business, but they're not. But their real values are probably health, learning, and family.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't grow because of that.
Mm.
But if we sit and say, how does building your business help your health?
Okay.
And ask yourself, how does that connect? And do that 50 times. Then do it 100 times. I guarantee you behavior will change. That person will begin.
What do you do 50 times or 100 times?
Ask yourself the question, whatever you love to do the most in the day.
Uh-huh.
Ask yourself 50 benefits of you doing that behavior, building your business. How does it help that behavior? So for example, let's say someone loves to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They love to get healthy. Okay, great. How does building your business, serve you to build your health? And if you can see how building a business is helping your health, all of a sudden that business is going to start to climb more value. You can take more action in it. And it's not going to be a struggle. We started this whole conversation with saying extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation.
Mm-hmm.
This links it internally. So the person wants to do it, doesn't feel like they have to do it.
Mm.
And when they want to do it, then they don't need external motivation. They don't need to be forced into it. Then they do it because they want to do it.
Yeah, I found for me that I need accountability in an area that I'm struggling in order to be able to stay consistent in the right action until I can, change how I think about it.
Do you find that the things that you actually love and you say, this is easy for me, you don't need accountability?
Some areas, sure. Like physical fitness, I'm enjoying getting more physically fit, but I still need accountability. And nutrition for sure, I need accountability. So if I start, in my little bubble, I'm good. As soon as I leave the bubble, I become less consistent in workouts, less consistent with food. I'll impulse, say yes to something, say no to other things.
Sure.
But inside the bubble, I have accountability structures built up to be able to kind of make me do what I should be doing. And I feel good about it when I do it.
Yeah.
But I'm really good at negotiating with myself.
We all are.
I'm unbelievable.
We all are. That old fashioned looks really good.
Exactly.
It looks really good. I get it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just like, so yeah, figuring this out as far as reprogramming myself, the work stuff, creating content, that type of stuff it's natural. It's like
Sure.
going downhill. The other things that I need to do that were kind of neglected or abused for decades.
Yeah.
It's got old hooks in there. I'm just trying to, turn the tide. I will tell you one thing. I had started on the health path, right?
Mhm.
And I was serious about it. I was aggressive. I was in Paris, France, and somebody complimented me. You're looking great. Good job. Well done. And I immediately went to eat. Immediately. And I went, wait, well, hold on. I'm not
I bet you went for sweets.
Yeah, I'm not hungry. No, it's pizza. I'm not
Grease.
hungry.
Okay.
I'm not hungry at all. But the compliment triggered a setback. So, and just recently, in like the last couple months, I've had this mindset of getting to under 200 pounds and, still be lean and all that.
Yeah.
So I'm like 202, 203. And I hadn't weighed myself in a while. And I'd weighed myself as like 202, 203.
Mhm.
And as soon as I weighed it, I went to like 208.
Mhm.
Like, what is the world? It's like, I started paying very, very close attention to compliments, because if I'm not aware, that's a sabotage trigger for me, because it's not my own vision of, I guess my vision of myself,
Well, it is, but it's also this other mechanism, I think,
Hmm.
right? And allow me to come from my
Sure,
vantage
sure.
point on it, right? Remember I said there's 5 emotions?
Mhm.
So when someone gives us a compliment, we become prideful in that. And then all of a sudden, I call it a positive root experience or a positive trauma. I've coined the term as a positive trauma. So when you look at someone, if you look at their life and someone hits their high point in their business, their career, their life, they crash,
Mm-hmm.
right? So every time we go high, we have to come down. Our blood sugars are managed this way as well, right? Sugars go up, they got to go down. This is the game of life. I didn't create it. The guy upstairs created it. If it goes up, it has to go down. If it goes up, it has to go down. The bigger the up, the bigger the down. The bigger the up, the bigger the down. We know this. So when we set goals, targets, and trajectories, we go dopamine, norepinephrine, dopamine, norepinephrine. And it happens in this cycle. When we get complimented and we don't believe that we're actually truly where we want to be, if it's external, then we create that pride, shame cycle in our brain. And those emotions are in essence running us. Instead of, okay, like if you want, after we're done, I will sit and work with you and rewire this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a no-brainer for me.
Come on.
This is a no-brainer for me. And we'll sit down and I'll
on.
do it. That's not even an issue. Because that high breeds the low. The high breeds the low. But if you actually look at it and say, hey, this is part of the journey in it, it doesn't affect you, because we want our blood sugars to go up and down, but we want it to go in a trajectory,
Right.
steady.
I just wanted to break in for a second and ask if you're struggling to stay motivated in your network marketing business. Are you feeling stuck? Like you're spinning your wheels, but not seeing the results that you'd hope to get? Well, you're not alone. This happens to everyone. And that's exactly why I created GoPro Insider. This is a daily video coaching program designed to give you the exact steps to move forward. In an average of just 7 minutes a day, you'll get my best strategies to master your mindset, sharpen your skills, and start seeing real progress. If you're tired of guessing, searching all over the internet for solutions, and ready for a proven path to success, join me at GoProInsider.com for as low as $9 a month, just 30 cents a day. It's time to take control of your business and your future. GoProInsider.com. Okay, let's get back to the conversation.
So our whole brain is designed to keep us in balance. It's completely designed to keep us in balance. So when someone's complimenting you, you look great. Crap.
I was like, yeah, thanks. And then, where's pizza?
Mm-hmm. I found this in my practice a long time ago, Eric. I would sit and I realized when I complimented my staff, next month they screw up and they quit. I give someone a bonus.
How do you reconcile that with like the recognition side of network marketing?
Yeah, it's a great question.
And people being driven for that recognition, wanting that recognition.
So I'm kind of
and
the
performing
antithesis.
for it.
I'm the antithesis of that.
Wow.
I'm the antithesis. That when I work with people, I've taken people making $200,000 a year and then 11 months later make $1 million a year, because I don't get them on the reward on the outside. I get them intrinsic on the inside. And when
intrinsic.
What
does that mean?
Meaning that they're doing it for themselves, not for the external, not for the company reward, not for the ring or whatever the prize is, right? And I know network marketing is driven on the rewards heavily.
It's very level up,
Yeah.
competitive, recognition driven.
And in essence, if we look at our brain, I was literally on a flight here, sitting right next to me was a psychiatrist. And so we got into a 3-hour discussion. And I asked her, I said, what do you see as the biggest challenge in the world today as a psychiatrist? And she says, people are too driven by rewards on the outside. I said, I agree with you 100%. Daniel Amen says the same thing, Dr. Amen. And I agree with his philosophy 100%. And so instead of the rewards, I get them to actually look internally. And when they do that, what happens is that they actually go after it, and they break their barriers and ceilings. And then all of a sudden, goals that they've been trying to hit up against all this time, 19 years, 20 years later, 6 months later, they crack it. Then they crack it. Because if we all sit and say, we've all heard this, we are the creator of our reality, then you're also the creator of the resistance of your reality. So what we have to do is rewire that resistance so that you can go towards what you want to. Right. And so it's the same type of thing. The more we focus on external rewards, the less we actually are able to govern ourselves, because every success needs another reward. My first book was Chasing Success after that exact premise.
Interesting. So, I mean, there's another book similar. Have you seen The Gap and the Gain? Dan Sullivan's book?
I've heard of it. I have not read it.
Do you know the premise?
I don't. Please.
The premise is the gap is where you are compared to where you would like to be, and you're always unhappy.
Sure.
The gain is where you started and where you are.
Sure.
And if you live in the gain instead of the gap, then you're always going to be grateful.
100%. I agree with that.
And not permanently unhappy because you're dissatisfied because you're beating yourself up because I should be farther.
Yeah. And that's completely, I agree with that 100%, because you're actually grateful of where you are today. If we've all heard this, right? If you looked at the problems you have today 5 years ago, you would have begged for these problems.
Yeah.
Right. And there's truth to that. There's so much truth to that, is that's serotonin, right? There's 4 neurotransmitters. Let me go geek for science for a second.
Go ahead.
You have dopamine, which is going to motivate you. You have endorphins that are going to keep you going, make you start feeling better. Serotonin is going to actually make it a habit. And fourth is going to be oxytocin, where you actually love it.
I'd like all 4, please, and in massive quantities. Is there a pill for this?
I don't have one of those pills.
Damn.
Right?
I'd like a limitless pill. Thank you.
We all do. But I think when we look at it, we sit and say, hey, can we go after these things? But we've got to take ourselves through the journey of actually allowing ourselves to experience that. But if we allow ourselves to be grateful for where we are today versus seeing what we don't have, then you're going to have far more levels of success.
All right. So you got to help me understand, because my premise has basically been look for repeating patterns in your life.
Sure.
You're the asset, and your breakthroughs are found in the repeating patterns. You'll find the symptoms there to be able to fix different things. Raise your awareness about those things, and then use the plan, do, review to get the reps necessary in order to be able to reprogram over time. Build competence, build confidence, repeat the cycle over and over.
Yep.
And always be thinking about the next thing.
Yep.
What's the next thing? Because a lot of people get comfortable real fast at a very low level compared to what they could do. Sure. And maybe it doesn't match their own image of themselves or whatever they're programming when they were a child, or for me, kind of growing up in the religious family was hard for a rich person to get into heaven. Mm-hmm. All these different types of things. It's like, I'd like to go to heaven. And imposter syndrome, shutting you down with some of these different things and all that. So where you're approaching is completely 180 from what I've done myself and you say it is kind of what I'm fascinated with is it's not a one size fits all type of a thing, because some people are predisposed to certain directions and some people have a different pathway. It's like Tony Robbins. He's good at helping people with breakthroughs in pretty short periods of time, but he said there's like 6 different patterns.
Yep.
And he looks for the patterns, and once he finds the pattern, then he knows how to guide a person through to the other side if they're suicidal or whatever.
Sure.
So are you saying something similar, that there's basically a pattern for, you can figure out how somebody's made up pretty quickly, and then there's a prescription or a pathway to fix it?
100%.
All right. So take the floor. Tell us.
First, get the code. Second, get the values of the individual. Third, find the successes of the individual. Then find their failures of the individual. All of these are going to be patterns that you look for. First, you have to find out really what is the code. What are you made up of inside? Because you're not going to be able, like, I'll give you an example, right? And then I'll come back to it. Like if someone has CompT, which is the achiever's the break, if they have a low level of CompT, their brain is not going to be able to process things that are coming on in their life. Everything is going to feel like that's just hitting them all day long. Their body isn't going to rest. It's not going to relax. And what happens is that they don't actually recover, don't actually sleep, and they burn out because of that. So I'm mixing health and success in this conversation. I say there's 5 pillars in the way that we look at life. I say there's unshakable mind. You have to have an unshakable body.
Say it slowly.
Yep, sorry. You have to have an unshakable mind. Everything we've been talking about today so far has been the unshakable mind, right? These are all components of the unshakable mind. Then you have to have an unshakable body. Then you have to have an unshakable diet. Then comes unshakable sleep. Then comes unshakable wealth. And I'm the first doctor, or the only doctor that I know of, that says, if you don't handle the money, all of this is going to be affected, right? Because if you don't handle the financial side of your life, you're not going to sleep well. You're going to gain weight. You're going to have cortisol issues. You're going to have bloating. You're going to feel inflamed. If you don't have money, you're not going to be able to eat right. You're not going to be able to buy the organic foods, all these factors. So money and business completely go hand in hand. So first, we got to figure out what you're made of. Second, we have to figure out the psychological values of the individual. Once we know what it is, because here's the thing, I felt growing up, what we've done in psychology, and I was definitely a proponent of this, and also I hate the word victim of it, but we're not all the same. And what we do is say everyone's psychology is exactly the same. Everyone should do the exact same. That's not true. Your life has a completely different set of patterns, experiences, perceptions based on your life and your bringing. Mine has a completely different set. So I wanted to go create a system that it doesn't matter if you grew up in Minneapolis in a religious community or down in the Bahamas, and it didn't matter. It was everyone could use this thing individualized, customized. Once we find out the person's real values and identity, then we look at it and say, okay, what's their real mission? Every person has a mission, and it's individualized. And their mission, then what we do is take away, okay, what are the resistance? And those resistance are the emotional pieces. And then what we have to do is unlock those and rewire those and remove the emotions by finding the event and the emotion. Every emotion.
Some event that occurred somewhere in your past that you got to get past.
You got to get past that.
Or change the meaning of.
Or the event in the future that you want, right? So if you're trying to break and create a new identity, let's say, someone says, I want to create an identity of being a 6-figure earner. Okay, great. What do we have to do to build the wires, the cords, the connection to create that identity? And then wire it to that. But our life is based on these events. So it's not just about getting rid of traumas and past stuff. It's also about how am I going to build the person I'm going to turn into? And so once we do that 4-step framework, in essence, then someone can go create the life they want to. I know this because I've done it. This is what I teach people. I've done it with hundreds and thousands of people. Is that if you can go sit and say, okay, let's go create what it is you want to. Wire your brain to go be that person you want to. And then you can go build that into.
So even if you're not predisposed to it, you can still rewire your brain?
You can. It's epigenetics.
So if you're predisposed and you can rewire anyway, why does the DNA matter?
Because you need to know exactly which side of it is going to be high or low. So for example, let's say someone has a low level of MAOA. So they're going to have high amounts of serotonin and norepinephrine in the body. The rewiring process for that individual is going to be different than someone who doesn't have it, right? It's a different prescription for that individual
Okay.
in the way they live. It also goes down to diet too.
Sure. It does.
Absolutely.
So how?
So for example, someone who has CompT, let's use CompT because that's a very famous one, right? CompT, someone who has low levels of CompT and has high dopamine should not drink coffee because their stimulation is going to be way too active. They don't know that. And what that's going to do, it's going to cause adrenal problems and cortisol so they don't lose weight. So all of these behaviors that we do, we want to regulate our behaviors to our DNA cycle.
Okay. Huh.
There's a lot, I know.
Yeah. I'm trying to unpack it. One for the individual. And, what I keep thinking about in my head is there's people who are listening to this and say, okay, I want to rewire myself. Mm-hmm. But then you start thinking about these people who have teams. And if everybody's different, how do you figure out how to rewire or help the people who want to be rewired inside the organization if it's not some sort of standardized system?
It is a standardized system.
Yeah, but it's different. It's standardized, but it's different for how many different types of people.
Yeah, but you take them through a process or I take them through a process.
Yeah.
Right. And then you take them through that same process. Everyone can do it. Doesn't matter that when I do work with teams, and I have worked with teams, it's okay, cool. Let's take you through the values process. You're going to have a different set of values and you're going to have a different set of values.
Okay.
Great. Those values are individualized. Everyone works on their own premise of values. And then when we ask the questions, like that same question I just asked a little while ago, is how do you build your business, right? Or if you want to be healthy, link 50 benefits to you actually going out to building your business to making you healthy. Mm-hmm. I could do that with anything. Mm-hmm. I could sit and say, list 50 benefits. You could sit and say, my value is business. Someone could say being a mom. Someone can sit and say working out. Mm-hmm. You do that regardless. That individual is going to start seeing more business opportunities.
Right.
Because we filter our world through our values.
See, normally I would call that your subconscious brain. If you teach it to pay attention, you raise your awareness and pay attention, then it'll start letting you see, when you buy a red car, you start seeing all the red cars.
Sure.
You buy a Tesla, you start seeing all the Teslas. If you change your network marketing business, in this case, to being the primary and your job to be the secondary, then all of a sudden you're going to see all the network marketing opportunities.
Sure.
So
you're raising it in its value.
Yeah. But you're saying that it's less your subconscious and more active aligning the values and your active consciousness. Mm-hmm.
You can actively do that process is what I'm saying. Because we have so much information and I stand on the shoulders. I've had 130 genius mentors over my life, right? From Bob Proctor to Bill Gove to Steve Siebel to DeMartini to John Ashraf, everybody. Yep. I've studied with everyone. And we know more today about the brain than we ever did. And I do believe that it's important for us to stand on these shoulders and say, now, how do we take it to the next level? Mm-hmm. And this is the science of the future. This is the science of the next level because we can actually control our thoughts. We can control our destiny, not simply by doing things just like when personal development first came out, right? And you know this and I know this. And studies have shown people who go to personal development seminars, 96% of them see no change 3 months later. Why do people get stuck? Because they get motivated high and then they crash. They get motivated high and they crash. Because we're actually not changing them on the inside. We're just motivating them. Mm-hmm. Dopamine spike, crash. Dopamine spike, crash. Instead, can we create a system that says for every person that comes in, they actually build the business because they want to, because they need to on their own, rather than being forced to.
Push.
Exactly. That push is what causes people to burn out. That push is what's causing dopamine fatigue. That push is causing people to get sick and adrenal fatigue. And that's not just network marketers. That's all entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So how do people pull instead of push? How do they make the switch? If, they're listening to this, they want to do this on their own.
Well, first thing you
how
want,
do they do it?
I would sit and say that you have to ask yourself, what is it you're really doing it for? Mm-hmm. And in the brain, I like saying it this way. I have this mechanism, and maybe this will help people, is that if you're saying you do have to do, you're doing something because you have to do it, it's forced. Mm-hmm. You take it from have to need to should. It's an outside external person, external entity that's making you do it. Mm-hmm. If you can move yourself to love to do it, choose to, want to, choose to, and then you actually love doing this, then it's not a force.
Mhm.
You love building business.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question.
Mm-hmm.
I love geeking out.
Yeah.
There's no question. And we all are designed to do what we love. And the more we do what we love, we become inspired from within to do. That's the game we're trying to play here.
So you're trying to reframe the things that that are negatively driving you towards something,
Sure.
and step away from those and reframe it to something that you want to do instead of a pain price that you're willing to pay.
Yeah. And if there's enough pain, it'll get you to move, but it will get you stuck.
Hmm.
You'll have to go from.
So you're trying to avoid pain. That'll work in the very short term, but not in the long term.
Correct.
And if you can change the fact that you love it instead of you're willing to endure it,
That person will explode.
then you go better.
That person will go build whatever they want to build. They'll do it. They will be more disciplined. They will have the diet. They'll have the nutrition. They'll figure out these 5 pieces of their life, and they'll sit and say, "I will do everything," and every part of their life aligns to that,
Mm-hmm.
to that core of who they are.
So we started the conversation in talking about biohacking prior to the cameras rolling. Figuring out the body and all this stuff,
Yeah.
brain body connection.
Yeah.
And you were saying some of it is helpful and some of it might not be. Tell me how you came to those conclusions, and what are your biohacking premises?
So I used to do everything, right? I did everything. I was like, I'm the extremist. I'm going to do it all. I'm going to sauna every day. I'm going to cold plunge every day. I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was better because of it. And then I did a DNA test.
Brain DNA again?
This was just a general DNA. This
General
wasn't even
DNA.
a brain DNA.
Okay.
I just did a general DNA test, and I found some things out really interesting that really, really shifted the way that I think. It said, "Oh, you know what? Because I knew this. I hate the cold.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely hate the cold, but I'm there. I deal with it because I have for the last 45 years of my life."
Can I talk about the hate thing?
Yeah.
Did you see the Andrew Huberman? He's talking about the something amygdalate cortex.
The anterior mid-cingulate cortex.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's good for you. The bigger it is,
The challenge. Yeah.
and it grows when you do something you don't want to do.
Correct.
And that's part of the reason why he was having a conversation with David Goggins, and sharing that with him, that if you learn to love it, then it will stop growing. If you love something, it doesn't grow that. It doesn't stimulate that. If you don't love it and you do it anyway, then it grows.
The only difference will be when you love it, then you'll give yourself new challenges in it.
Ah, I see. Go longer, go whatever.
Correct. You'll create your new set of challenges. Like kids are a great example of this, right? We're talking about video games earlier.
Mm-hmm.
When you sit and watch a kid play video games, I remember my son, 7 years old. He won't stop.
They're amazing. Yeah.
Right? That's amazing. They will find new challenges for themselves in their value structure. They always do. And we do too. It doesn't matter if you're 60 years old or you're 7 years old. If it's something you value, you'll find a new way to challenge yourself for more.
Okay. So you could still stimulate that
Absolutely.
by taking something you love to do and finding a challenge in it.
Correct.
So it's about the challenge.
It is about the challenge. You still want a challenge.
Yeah.
A muscle doesn't grow without challenge.
Right.
The body needs that hermetic
So you
challenge.
learn to love working out, but now, challenge yourself without injuring yourself.
New weights, heavier weights, new reps,
Different routine.
different routines, new challenges. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
So I found out this DNA test
Mm-hmm.
says that I actually don't process cold well.
Hmm.
And if I go into the cold plunge every single day, I'm actually causing what's called a stress response on myself, which is doing the exact opposite of what I want to do. And it's actually making me put on more weight versus lose the weight. So
Even with the brown fat and all that
even with
stuff.
the brown fat, because it causes me a stress response.
Now, is it something you never do,
No, I do. I still do it.
but less often?
Instead of being in 45 degrees for 6 minutes and riding through it, like I'm just as hard.
I do
as
the
everyone.
48 minutes for 48 degrees for 3 minutes.
It's great.
And they say that achieves the results. Everything after that is just kind of a personal challenge.
Correct. So
And I need to do it after a sauna.
I'm the same way. I do it after.
Yeah, I got to be hot before I get in there and be cold.
So but now I just do 2 to 3 times a week
Mm-hmm.
for 3 minutes.
Okay.
I don't overdo it,
Okay.
knowing my body. Vitamin D. Vitamin D is a great example. For my entire life, I would go out golfing, Eric,
Mm-hmm.
mid-afternoon, and I'd go play golf, and I would end up, without question, with a sunstroke. And I would get this massive headache. I'd throw up. I'd get sick. And it's not like I was sitting there getting drunk on the, on the course or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone's like, why do you keep getting sick? I'm like, I don't know. So I tempered it by going early in the morning, wearing a white hat, white t-shirt, so I reflect the sun, move it away. Turns out I don't convert vitamin D2 to D3 properly.
Hmm.
So all that sun exposure I get turns into toxicity for me.
So you can't, even if it's methylated or all that stuff, it doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter. My body doesn't process it. So the reason I'm saying this is that, if 2 years ago I would have said, do it all.
Mm-hmm.
I've changed my tune to say,
So
wait,
it's very personalized, customized.
completely personalized.
So tell me what you believe in the biohacking space based upon your evidence.
I think what everyone does is moderation. I think there's a space for everything. What I do, exercise is a must. There's no question.
Uh-huh.
There's no better, you cannot live your life without exercising. It's just a must. I exercise every day, not to the same intensity every day.
Mm-hmm.
I lift weights 5 days a week, but I do cardio. I do cardio twice a day.
Mm.
I do cardio twice a day. I do cardio in the morning.
What's your cardio?
Simple treadmill or Stairmaster for 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do more fat burn. And then so a couple times a year, I'll do a month if I'm just doing HIIT. Just up my VO2 max when I do that. So
You do what?
VO2 max HIIT training.
Oh, HIIT. Yeah.
So burst training, sprint for 30 seconds or a minute and off. So I'll do that. Second thing, I've said that you manage your glucose and you manage your dopamine, you have a long life. So I do rewire my brain every day, every perception, every thought, everything I do, I'm making sure my mind stays grounded.
So tell me how you ground your mind and you rewire your brain.
So in the morning, I start, as everyone starts their morning, with affirmations of how great things are going to be. And that studies have shown this, that instead of actually looking for the positives in the morning, list out all the challenges you're going to have in the morning. So whatever the day is going to bring you, ask yourself, what challenges are ahead of me do I have to go through? And how do I tackle those first? So I address my challenges first, and I get grateful for my challenges. So I say, how does that help me? How's that helping me getting me to my goals? Okay, great. Let's go address them. At the end of the day, whatever goes well, I find the drawbacks to govern. I make sure I don't get too excited about things. And whatever goes great, that doesn't go well, I find the benefits to.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep myself in an even keel. I'm almost creating my own stoic mind, for lack of better words.
Okay.
So that's how I rewire my brain every day. Diet is super important. I eat my carbs in the morning. I do believe in carbs. I do think carbs are important. Whole grain, whole food. I do that all in the morning. I don't do carbs at night. I limit alcohol. I avoid it as much as possible. And even now, if I go out, you really have to twist my arm for me to have a drink. Like I said, old fashioned, because I love old fashions, right?
Mm-hmm.
A tequila old fashioned is my weakness. But I'll be very conscientious. I won't if I'm going out, I like music. I like dance. So if I'm going to listen to music, I may have a cocktail where I'm going to move and sweat it out. But if I'm just sitting there with the guys or sitting there at home watching TV, I'm not going to pour a drink because I know that's just going to sit in my system. If I am going to drink, I also make sure I take dihydroberberine for my blood sugar balance. I'm also going to use something called Deliverance to help liver cleanse and remove the toxins out of my system. Those are the big hacks that I take right off the top of my head. I measure everything too. I measure macros. Like literally the lady on the plane was like, what do you have in that bag? I have oats and protein. Yeah. I measure all of it because it's easy for me to put excess calories.
So easy, especially in the evening or when you're out of your bubble. Mm-hmm. What I've observed from very fit people is they eat like a bird mostly, and they're very good at pushing the plate away. It's just like eat, peck, push the plate away. I'm good. And everybody else is eating and gorging and, finishing their plate and doing all the stuff, and they just don't, and they're fine. They just have a little bit of this here, a little bit of that there, put it away. They have a little bit of dessert, they have a taste, then they push it away. Yeah. They're good. I'm finishing the freaking. We had somebody make us dinner 2 nights ago, and they made this lobster pasta, and the pasta plate was huge.
Yeah.
And the lobster was amazing. Sauce was amazing. And I finished it all. And I said, please, for my own sake, tomorrow, don't give me that much.
Yeah.
Just like, give me all you want in the protein. But when it comes to the carbs and the sauces and stuff, just less, because I'll eat it. If you put it in front of me, I'm going to eat it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get some bread to soak up the juice. I mean, all of it. This is my battles, right?
Yeah, I can help you with that because I know I used to live that. I don't touch pasta. You've got to really twist my arm for me to actually have pasta. I don't eat bread.
Just the white stuff.
Just the white stuff. But I don't eat bread at all. But white
We
pasta.
have rice?
I will have rice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will have rice.
White rice.
Rice is it's a staple of my diet, to be honest with you.
It doesn't do much for your glucose.
No. So I do rice. I do a CGM about 3 times a year,
What's that?
like a blood glucose monitor.
Okay, sure.
So I'll do it 3 times a year. I don't like wearing it every day. The first time I did it, I was so paranoid. I put it and said my blood sugars kept on dropping from 80 to 70 to 60 to 50. I'm like, oh my God, I'm dying. I'm like, it was a malfunctioning unit.
Oh.
But I was so dumb in my own head because we build our own stories of crap.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, I told my girlfriend, look, maybe I'm diabetic. I don't even realize it. If I faint and pass out, make sure you give me orange juice. And then I called the company and they're like, no, it sounds like you have a malfunctioning unit. My girlfriend looked at me. She goes, you're an idiot.
That's hilarious. When it comes to measurement, I have a Whoop. You look like you have an Aura ring.
I use an ultra human ring.
Ultra human ring.
Mm-hmm. It's a different ring. It's a newer ring. I like its accuracy.
Yeah.
I like it has more in the way of stress management. So it allows me to look and see, like, for example, I'll give you an example. It looks at the daily stress level you're in, differently than Aura does. Like if I'm watching TV at night, it'll show me the stress under my body versus not having it under stress. And it'll tell me when I'm relaxed versus not. It's a very clear understanding. So I like this one better. I switched. I used to have the Aura ring. I think I still pay for the membership, to be honest with you.
Yeah, probably. So do you think it helps with the measurement?
Which part of it?
Just measuring, recovery and
100%.
HRV and strain and sleep performance.
100%.
Those types of things. Maybe you can answer a question for me. And this is just for me. The rest of the audience, be patient for a second. So last night I slept, in my opinion, terrible. I was very restless. I fell asleep. Something woke me up, and then my brain. I was peaceful. I was fine, but I basically dozed in and out just very, very lightly, and then fell asleep decently around 5 a.m.
Okay.
Got up like 9:45.
Okay.
And what Whoop shows me is 98% recovery, 45 HRV, which is I normally have high 20s, 96% sleep performance. And it says I slept 7 hours and 13 minutes, 1 hour and 39 minutes of deep, and 2 hours and 6 minutes of REM. And I've been trying to work on getting my HRV higher. And this has happened a couple times when it's been a very restless night. Yeah. And recovery is huge and HRV is huge. Can you explain that to me?
Because you're sleeping later into the morning where you're getting deeper sleep.
Really?
Because your cortisol stems early part of that 3 to 5 a.m. And so you spike that, but then your body starts.
The second sleep is what
the second
really helps me?
Deeper sleep. That's what it's saying.
Huh.
But I will.
So a second sleep.
Yeah,
that
but
makes sense.
I would sit and say, I don't know what your daily routine is, right? Was it something that happened? Something startled? Was it a dream?
I mean, there was some bump in the night or whatever. I don't know what it was, but it startled me and woke me up at like 12:30 or something.
I will tell you, like, in my opinion, this is my opinion, not a fact, but any of these devices, your hand, your wrist, they're not as accurate.
No,
right?
They're not going to be 100%.
I think the best device out there for sleep is the 8 Sleep Pod.
I have it.
It's amazing.
I have it.
Are you
a fan? I'm a fan.
I'm a huge fan. 10 nights, I score 100 every night on that thing.
Really?
Every night.
How?
My girlfriend's like, how do you do that? I said, I have studied my pattern. I know that if I go to sleep between 9:45 and 10, I'm good. If I go to sleep at 10:15, I'm going to lose points.
See, my HRV for last night on the 8 Sleep was 40. Typical range 25 to 30. Heart rate was 65 beats a minute. It was a little lower than normal. breath rate was in typical range. And it makes all those like, tiny adjustments
Yeah.
Throughout the night. But yeah, man,
What time do you go to sleep?
late, 11 probably. And then we'll watch something or listen to a podcast or something, which is probably a bad idea.
And then what time are you getting up typically?
It depends. I'm a little bit jet lagged still from a trip to Korea. So, now it's set a little later.
Yeah.
When I'm really in a routine, I'll get up at like 7 and start my morning routine. My work day starts at 11. I like to do, red light, sauna, some cardio
Sure.
and weights and be done by 10 and then start the day at 11.
Yeah. So similar. But I have found that from all the research I've done, both energetically, Ayurvedically, if I go back into the Eastern studying of health and I go study Western, I found that the ideal circadian rhythm is 10 to 6.
10 to 6.
10 to 6.
Like sleeping though at 6.
Yeah. So I go to sleep at 9:45. I will wake up 5:45.
My quick fall asleep capability is weak.
So the mind is running.
I guess.
Yeah, the mind is running, so therefore the heart is staying up. So you're having a hard time for the parasympathetic to kick in to drop you into that sleep state.
Right.
Right? Do you take any melatonin or anything like that?
Melatonin works opposite for me.
So
It activates my brain.
Okay. So there is a gene code. There's a gene break here. I guarantee it. Okay. There is a gene break that's doing that.
Yeah. I take that stuff and I'm just like unhappy and wired.
My dad says the same thing. I don't have a problem. I take a little bit. I take about 1 milligram or 2 every night and I'm out.
Yeah.
But my dad says the same thing.
I take magnesium. I take,
Glycinate?
I don't know.
Magnesium glycinate is typically better for bed. I actually like the best magnesium I think that I've ever seen on the market. There's a couple of people that argue it, but is the Bio Optimizers.
Mm-hmm.
Their magnesium, I think, is the best. I really like their magnesium.
Okay.
It's got all 7 different types of magnesium. So it's like, which one's the best? I don't know. I get them all.
Right. You take perfect aminos or aminos of some sort?
I did take perfect aminos, and then I stopped taking perfect aminos because I stopped fasting. What I did with my own health journey in this is that I was 55 pounds overweight, and then I started doing all this fasting, 1 a days, and I was really good. I'm disciplined. I'm disciplined like anybody. Like I'm rock solid. And I did, but I made myself so weak. And I was doing vegan, vegetarian, doing all this stuff. And I made myself so weak at the time that I had to start eating meat again. But then what I did is that in that process, when I lost all that muscle tissue, I made myself insulin resistant because I had nowhere to store all the glucose. So so that's when I was doing perfect aminos. And now I don't. Now I don't do any fasting whatsoever.
I still take them for just to keep the muscle mass where I'd like it to be. I have 1, 2, 3 health goals. My number 1 is to get to 15% body fat.
Great.
And kind of stabilize there. 2 is to get under 1 pound of visceral fat. And 3 is to maintain 160 pounds of lean muscle mass.
That's great.
I don't want to lose any of that muscle mass. It's important.
Yeah.
Especially as you start getting
Absolutely
older.
it is.
So from a mind hacking and biohacking standpoint, what would you suggest I do outside of you're going to reprogram me after this on how to think about food different? Because here's what I know about myself. I'm very rebellious to structured authority. I'm rebellious against anything that I'm supposed to do.
Which is why you're an entrepreneur. Which is why you're successful the way you are.
If somebody tells me I can't have carbs, boy, I want some bread, whatever. So I have to really, really pay attention. If it's my idea, I'm good.
But what you just said is exactly what I want to happen.
Yeah.
Right? I'm the same way. You tell me I can't do something, I'm going to show you I can do it. I can do it better than you thought I could.
Right.
Right? I get it. But what if it's just my idea that this is what I want to do? Then good. I made that decision completely. So from a mind body hacking standpoint, I would tell you that let's get the code so that we can get you to sleep at night first, number 1. Second thing I would sit and say, tell me about your diet. When do you eat? When do you not eat?
I typically in the morning I'll have like an oatmeal with berries, and like a protein shake probably.
Okay, good.
And then
right when you wake up?
Yeah, pretty close after working out. So I try to get like 30 to 50 grams of protein in addition in the morning. And then early afternoon, I'll have typically like some sort of meat and rice.
Correct.
And then dinner is a protein, little bit of carbs and vegetables.
So I would sit and tell you to do something that it's an old bodybuilder hack, but this is what these guys do. And it's so smart. It's our body can handle 30 grams of protein
In a sitting, right?
before insulin spike, right? So take 30 grams of protein in your breakfast, which you're doing, and then you're doing the oatmeal, you're working out. Perfect. I think that's fantastic. Then within 2.5, 3 hours later, do another 30 grams of protein with some carbs post-workout.
And that's like the meat and rice.
Yeah, but don't wait. Don't wait. If you wake up at 7 and you're having that at 1 o'clock, that's too long.
Yeah.
Right? Keep the metabolism running through the day. So have 6 meals through the day versus just the 3.
Right.
And then at 3 o'clock, have another just protein, straight protein. In the evening, don't touch carbs.
Yep.
No carbs at night. No late night pasta. None of, have a filet, have some steak, by all means, but don't touch late night steak or late night, carbs.
Just protein and veggies.
Protein and veggies, and limit the fats. You want your body to use the fats that are in the inside. So if you're having a high fat,
Healthy fats,
even healthy fats,
the avocados and
I think it's
coconut
good.
oils and all that.
But you want your body to process your own fat and use the fat that's already in
I have
you.
plenty.
We all did, right? Like I did too, and I still do, right? So
Yeah.
working through it. But we want our body to use that. So yes, those fats are good. I'm not saying they aren't, right?
Okay.
But sometimes we add the additional calories in the state of fat and don't realize it. Fats have 9 calories per gram versus carbs or protein. So what we're doing is we're adding more fats in our calories. So if you're trying to lose a little bit more weight and lose the visceral fat, we want the body to say, hey guys, there's no fat in here. Let's go to our own stores and use it. So then you'll go to your own stores and use that fat molecule and you'll process that. Once you get to the point where you want to, then you're going to want to put that fat back in. Couple times a week, you have a spoon of olive oil, whatnot to use to recirculate. Absolutely, completely okay. But on a day-to-day, we just want to regulate that a little bit.
Got it. So all this is fascinating. And I know I've kind of wandered around in this whole conversation, but what advice do you have for an entrepreneur in order to be able, they can get your book, Wired for Wealth. And we'll put the link in the show description. But somebody's out there listening to this and says, okay, I want to rewire my brain. I want to figure all this stuff out. I want to do what's best for my body and for my business and for my health and for, balancing all that stuff. The moderation piece for the hard drivers, the A types. Give them some advice as to how they would do that.
I think the first thing it's today, this is my answer to it. It's get the code, get your code, because it's so personalized first. I would say that, but I also would sit and say, get the healthiest you can possibly be, because if you don't have the energy income is going to show up. Income is going to decline. It's going to show up.
Well, it's going to show up to whatever your energy level is.
Correct.
Yeah.
I always used to sit and say,
it's all about the vibration, energy, that kind of stuff. You believe in all that?
I do. I can go really deep down that rabbit hole if we want to.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely it is. The greater energy you have, the more people are going to be attracted magnetically to you. Your income is going to grow. Your influence, your magnetism is going to grow. It's all part of it. Right? And so I would say get yourself healthy as you can be. So number one, that's why I created the 5 pillars, right? Create an unshakable mind. Then you focus on creating an unshakable body, like lifting, exercising, moving. Then you create an unshakable diet. Because if you don't work out, you're not going to feel the need to have a good diet. Sleep follows that. Because if your diet isn't right and your body's not moving, you're not going to sleep well. That's a key component, right? Naturally. I'm not saying taking all the drugs, and we don't have a deficiency of Ambien. And then the wealth follows. Wealth follows your energy, right? And so I would sit and say those are 5 pillars I would look at it. Get the code, get your body healthy as it can be, and then watch the money start to change.
Love it. Dr. Trivedi, this has been amazing.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate you sharing this. I appreciate the book. I'm going to go through it. This is the first time I'm getting it. So I just found out that we were going to have this conversation, like just a short while ago, through my team. So I was excited about that. And, I know you're connected with some other people that are connected in my mastermind and those types of things. So, all of this is great. I really appreciate it. The whole idea of rewiring is at the foundation of everything I'm doing. So I'm going to look forward to learning as much as I can.
Well, even the book was written. The book is written in a format that it gives you, here's the idea, and then here's a set of exercises. It's written like a workbook.
Love it.
So everyone can take it, use it as a workbook for themselves. That's why I wrote it that way.
Love it. Love it. Love it.
Even as a training tool with your teams.
Yeah.
To be very honest with you, that's really like how it was written. It's like, okay, let's talk about this chapter. Now let's work the rewiring and do this as a team. That's kind of how I wrote that book.
Love it. Wired for Wealth. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thanks, Eric.
So that's my conversation with Dr. Alok Trivedi. If you want to get more information, check out the show notes, get yourself a copy of the book, maybe get your brain DNA figured out, start yourself down this journey. We're all in the process of learning and growing and finding out about ourselves. And we're living in an amazing time where we can find out about ourselves. There's advancements in technology, and we need to be as healthy as possible for as long as possible so we can serve our mission and our purpose. So do that. And if you got value from this, think about somebody that might also like it and share it with them. Help us spread the word. All right. So get yourself wired for wealth, unlock your brain for financial success, and I'll see you next time.